Daddy. I love you, Dad. I love you more, son. The CEO met a delivery girl with a child at a restaurant. Not knowing the boy was his son. The first time his son called him Mr. Seo Ji-hun felt nothing. Because he had no idea the boy was his. Seo Ji-hun was not just successful. He was the kind of successful that made other successful men feel ordinary. His company sat at the top of every list that mattered. His name appeared in newspapers before breakfast and on television before dinner. His penthouse overlooked the Han River, and the city glittered beneath him every night like it was performing for him. His shoes cost more than most people's rent. His calendar had no blank spaces. His life was a machine, perfectly oiled, perfectly cold, and perfectly empty. After a board meeting that lasted 4 hours and solved nothing, Ji-hun felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel. Exhaustion. Not the physical kind. The deeper kind. The kind that comes when you realize you have been busy for years, but not actually living. He dismissed his driver near a small side street and walked alone. He found a quiet restaurant tucked between 2 larger buildings, the kind of place that smelled like garlic and warmth. He stepped inside just to sit somewhere that had no glass walls. That was when he saw them. A woman in a food delivery uniform was seated at a corner table. Her jacket was worn at the elbows. Her hair was tied back loosely. She looked like someone who had been running since morning and had only just found 5 minutes to breathe. Across from her sat a small boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, pressing a blunt crayon hard against the back of a paper menu and drawing something that looked like a dog or possibly a very round car. He was humming to himself. She was not eating. She was counting. Coins, small bills, carefully laid out on the table one by one. Her lips moving quietly as she added them up. The waiter came. He leaned close and said something low. She closed her eyes for just a second. It wasn't enough. Ji-hun stood up before he realized he had decided to. He walked to the cashier, paid for their table, and said quietly, "Don't say who did it." He sat back down and picked up his water glass and watched the city outside the window. Then he heard her voice. Not at him. Just her voice. He had not heard it in years, but his body remembered before his mind did. He turned slowly. She was standing now, looking around the restaurant with confused eyes. Then her eyes landed on him, and the world became very quiet. "Suyin," he said. Not loudly. Almost to himself. Her name felt strange coming out of his mouth after so many years. 6 years ago in Tokyo, at a global investment summit, they had met at a rooftop gathering on the last night. She was a junior analyst from a partner firm. They had talked until 3 in the morning. Then one more night. Then she flew home and he flew elsewhere. And the world moved the way it always does when people do not hold on. He thought it ended naturally. He thought she moved on. He thought he did too. But now she was standing in a worn delivery jacket holding a paper bag and staring at him with eyes that held an entire history he did not know existed. And the boy, still humming at the table, turned to look at Ji-hun. And Ji-hun's breath left his body entirely. The jawline. The crease between the eyebrows when he concentrated. The small birthmark just below his left ear, identical to the one Ji-hun's mother had pointed out on Ji-hun as a baby in photographs he still kept in a drawer. The room tilted. Suyin walked toward him slowly. Her chin was raised but her hands were not completely still. "Ji-hun," she said. Her voice was careful. Measured. Like someone who had rehearsed being calm in case this moment ever happened. He nodded. He could not arrange any words in the right order. The boy ran over and grabbed her sleeve. "Mommy, is the food coming?" The word mommy landed on Ji-hun's chest like something heavy dropped from a height. Suyin put her hand on the boy's shoulder. She looked at Ji-hun and said, "This is an old friend. Just someone I used to know." Ji-hun felt the distance she packed into those words. He crouched down to meet the boy's eyes. "What's your name?" The boy stood straight. "Jaiwoo. Park Jaiwoo. I'm 6. 6. Ji-hun's mind went silent, and then very loud. 6. He made himself smile. "That's a strong name." The boy looked at him seriously. "Are you the one who paid for our food?" Ji-hun blinked. The boy crossed his arms. "You should have just said so. It's more polite." Suyin hid her face briefly. Ji-hun laughed. It was real. He hadn't done that in a while. He did not say anything more that night. He did not chase her to the door or demand answers in front of her son. He returned to his table and sat there long after his food arrived, and went cold. Before he left, he folded his business card and handed it to the server. Give this to her. After I've gone. Outside, the streets were full of people rushing somewhere important. Jihoon walked slowly. He had never walked slowly in his life. The city lights looked the same as always. But they felt different. They felt like they were shining on someone else. Suyin found the card at the bottom of the paper bag on her way home. She sat on the edge of her bed after Jaewoo fell asleep. She turned the small card over in her fingers. Seo Jihoon. So. She pressed it flat against her knee. She had found out she was pregnant 2 months after Tokyo. She called his office. His assistant told her he was traveling. She called again. He was in a meeting. She called a third time and was told gently but firmly that Mr. Seo's schedule did not permit personal calls, and perhaps she could leave a message. She left too. Neither was returned. She waited 3 more weeks. Silence. She understood. He had chosen his life. She chose her son. She moved back to her hometown. She worked mornings at a pharmacy and evenings doing food deliveries. She did not tell anyone who Jaewoo's father was. She told Jaewoo only that his father lived far away. She told herself she was fine. Most days she believed it. Now his card sat in her hand, and she did not know what to do with the feeling rising in her chest. The following week, Jihoon came back to the same restaurant at the same hour. He brought nothing. No flowers, no gifts. He simply sat at the same table and waited. He was not sure they would come. They came. Jaewoo spotted him from the doorway and pointed. Mom, it's the polite man. Suyin closed her eyes briefly. Then she walked over. Are you going to be here every week? Jihoon looked at her honestly. I don't know yet. I just needed to try. She sat down across from him slowly. Jaewoo climbed into the chair beside his mother and studied Jihoon with the open curiosity that only children are allowed. Do you have any kids? The question moved through Jihoon like a current. No, he answered. Jaewoo tilted his head. Why not? Because I wasn't paying attention to the right things. Jaewoo nodded as if this made perfect sense. My mom says I need to pay better attention too. She says I miss things that are right in front of me. Jihoon looked at Suyin. She looked away. When Jaewoo stepped outside to watch a dog being walked past the window, Jihoon asked quietly, Suyin, is he mine? She didn't look surprised. She had been waiting for the question since the moment she saw him in the restaurant. She looked at her hands. Yes. The word was barely a breath. Jihoon sat very still. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse her of anything. He pressed both palms flat on the table and stared at the grain of the wood and breathed slowly until he trusted himself to speak. I didn't know. I know, she said. I called. He looked up. I called 3 times. I know that too, she said softly. His assistant mentioned it later. Much later. When it was already too late to fix. Jihoon thought about those months. The merger. The overseas expansion. The phones that never stopped ringing from people who needed him for things that felt urgent and turned out not to be. He had built a wall between himself and anything that wasn't the company. He hadn't known what was on the other side of that wall. Now he did. Jaewoo came back inside and looked between the two of them. You both look serious, he announced. Jihoon smiled slowly. We're just talking. Jaewoo sat down and picked up his crayon again. Grown-ups always look sad when they talk. Jihoon watched him draw. His son. Sitting right there with a blunt red crayon and a paper menu. His son who did not know him. His son who called him Mr. I don't want to take him from you, Jihoon said quietly to Suyin later. I'm not asking for anything fast. I just want a chance to be present. She looked at him a long time. No lawyers, he added. No official pressure. No disruption to his life. Just let me start somewhere. She searched his face the way someone checks ice before stepping on it. Then she nodded once. Start small. He started very small. He did not arrive with toys that cost more than her monthly rent. He came with time. He showed up on a Saturday and asked if Jaewoo wanted to walk to the park. Nothing dramatic. Just a walk. Jaewoo held his mother's hand and walked on his right side, and talked without stopping about a cartoon involving robots and a boy who could turn into a hawk. Ji-hun listened to every word. He learned that Jae-woo was afraid of escalators but pretended he wasn't. He learned that he liked his rice with too much sesame oil, and that he had a stuffed elephant named Bongsik that he had owned since he was 2 and that Bongsik went everywhere. He learned that Jae-woo laughed until he couldn't breathe if you made the right kind of silly face. Ji-hun practiced that face alone in his bathroom mirror that night. He came to Jae-woo's school sports day. He stood near the back of the crowd and did not tell anyone his name. Jae-woo ran a relay race and dropped the baton and picked it up and kept running and came in last and crossed the finish line with both arms raised like he had won. Ji-hun cheered louder than anyone. Jae-woo found him in the crowd afterward. "You were really loud," he said. Ji-hun nodded. "You were really fast." Jae-woo squinted. "I came last." "Details," Ji-hun said. Jae-woo thought about this and then grinned. Suyeon watched from nearby. She was not watching Ji-hun's wealth or his face, or the way other parents whispered when they recognized him. She was watching whether he would check his phone. He never did. At bedtime one evening, Jae-woo asked a question with his eyes already half closed. "How come I don't have a dad who lives here?" The room went very still. Suyeon stood in the doorway. Ji-hun sat on the edge of the bed and took a breath. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "dads don't know their dads until it's almost too late." Jae-woo opened his eyes a little wider. "How do you not know?" "Because they weren't paying attention." Jae-woo was quiet. "Are you paying attention now?" Ji-hun looked at him. "To what matters most, yes." Jae-woo seemed to accept this the way children accept things when the answer feels true even if it isn't complete. He turned over and pulled Bongsik closer, and was asleep in 2 minutes. Ji-hun sat there for a while after. He did not want to leave. He made himself anyway. Small steps. Weeks became months. Ji-hun reorganized his life quietly. He started leaving the office before 8 in the evening. He stopped taking calls during dinners. He told his assistant to hold all weekend meetings unless something was genuinely on fire. His team noticed. One senior director told him he seemed distracted. Ji-hun said, "I'm the most focused I've been in a decade. I just changed what I'm focused on." He burned soup trying to learn how to cook something Jae-woo would eat. Jae-woo stood on a stool beside him and gave instructions that were contradictory and confident. Ji-hun followed all of them. The soup was still bad. They ate it anyway. One evening, Jae-woo fell asleep during a story, his whole weight leaning against Ji-hun's arm. Ji-hun went perfectly still. Suyeon said from across the room, "You can put him down. The bed is right there." Ji-hun shook his head once. "Give me another minute." His voice came out quieter than he intended. Suyeon looked at him from the doorway. The guard around her heart moved slightly. Not gone. Just shifted. She had been tested by love before. She had been left before. She was not careless with her son's heart or her own. But she was watching everything, every visit, every cancellation that never came. Every moment he showed up even when it wasn't convenient. She was keeping score in the quiet part of her mind, and so far the numbers were not what she expected. Children's Day at Jae-woo's school came with an announcement. Each child was to invite someone important in their life to attend a small morning celebration. Jae-woo came home and immediately went quiet. Suyeon asked what was wrong. He said nothing. Then at dinner he said very quietly, "We have to invite someone important." Ji-hun was there that evening. He looked at Jae-woo carefully. "Do you want me to come?" Jae-woo stared at his bowl. "You might be busy." Ji-hun said, "I am asking you, do you want me to come?" Jae-woo was still for a moment. Then almost in a whisper, "Yes." Ji-hun nodded firmly. "Then I will be there." Jae-woo looked at him with the eyes of a child who has already been disappointed by the world in small ways, and learned not to hope too quickly. "You promise?" Ji-hun placed his hand over his heart. "I promise." Jae-woo looked away and said nothing more. He did not smile. Promises are words. He had heard words before. The morning of the school celebration, Ji-hun's phone started before 6. A crisis. A major acquisition that had taken 14 months to negotiate was suddenly collapsing. The other party wanted a meeting that morning or the deal was dead by noon. Ji-hun's legal team called him 4 times before 7. His chief of operations came to his apartment. "This deal is worth more than anything we've closed in 3 years, she said. "I know what it's worth," Ji-hun said. He was already putting on his jacket. She looked at him. It's an 11 o'clock meeting. It starts at 11. The school event, she said carefully. Yes, he said. She stared. The deal, he stopped her. Get the legal team on a call. Brief me in the car. We have 90 minutes. If you can hold them until noon, good. If not, we let it go. She said nothing. He was already heading to the door. She had worked for him for 6 years, and she had never heard him say let it go about anything. The school hall was already full when Jihoon arrived at 11:05. Children sat in small chairs arranged in rows beside the important people they had invited. Jihoon scanned the room. Near the back left, Jaewoo sat alone. His hands were in his lap. His eyes were on the door. When they found Jihoon, the boy froze. Jihoon walked through the rows of chairs steadily. He sat down beside Jaewoo and said, I told you I would come. Jaewoo's lip pressed together. You're a little late. I know. I'm sorry. Jaewoo looked at the stage. His shoulders came down slightly. The teacher approached and smiled. You must be Jaewoo's father. Jihoon looked at the boy first. Jaewoo looked back at him with those careful eyes that saw too much for a 6-year-old. Then the boy nodded slowly, just slightly. Jihoon looked back at the teacher. Yes, he said. The word felt like something he had been holding a long time, and finally sat down in the right place. When the children were invited to present their handmade gifts to their guests, Jaewoo stood up and walked to Jihoon with a folded piece of thick paper. He held it out with both hands. It had a drawing on the front, 2 figures, one big, one small, standing next to each other. Inside in careful uneven letters it said, I saved you a seat in my heart. Jihoon unfolded it and read it, and then had to look at the ceiling for a moment. Jaewoo stood waiting. Then Jihoon knelt down on one knee right there on the school hall floor, and put his arms around his son. Jaewoo hugged back. Small arms. Very tight. Suyin, standing in the doorway where she had arrived just in time to see it, pressed her hand over her mouth. She was not watching a powerful man. She was watching a father who finally understood the only meeting that could not be rescheduled. When the celebration ended, Jaewoo held Jihoon's hand all the way to the school gate. Not the way a polite child holds a stranger's hand. The way a child holds on when they are making sure something is real. Outside the gate, Jaewoo stopped. Will you come on Saturday too? Jihoon crouched down. If you want me to. Jaewoo thought about this with great seriousness. Then he said, I want you to. And that was that. That night, Jihoon sat in his penthouse and looked at it properly for the first time in years. The white walls. The absence of anything soft. No drawings taped to the refrigerator. No small shoes near the door. No noise. He picked up his phone and called his assistant. Clear my schedule for the overseas trip next month. The assistant was quiet for a moment. Sir, that trip has been on the books for. I know how long it's been on the books, Jihoon said. Clear it. He ended the call. He sat in the silence of his expensive, enormous, empty apartment, and said quietly to no one, I have somewhere more important to be. The weeks that followed were steady and unglamorous, and the best weeks of his life. He bought a book about the planets because Jaewoo had started asking questions about space that Jihoon could not answer. They lay on the floor together looking at photographs of Jupiter and Saturn, and Jaewoo asked which planet Jihoon would live on if he had to choose. Jihoon said he thought he had been living on a very cold, very lonely moon for a long time. Jaewoo said that sounded terrible. It was, Jihoon agreed. Jaewoo pointed to a bright dot near the edge of the page. You should live here instead. Jihoon looked at where the boy was pointing. Then he looked at Jaewoo. I'm working on that. One evening an envelope appeared under Suyin's door. No name on the outside. Inside were photographs taken from a distance. Her and Jaewoo and Jihoon at the park. A typed message underneath. Are you sure he's staying this time? She stood in the hallway holding the photographs and felt the old fear come back in a wave. When Jihoon arrived that evening she showed him without a word. His jaw tightened. He looked at the photos. Then at her. This is my world leaking into yours and I'm sorry. She said, I don't want Jaewoo caught in the middle of anything. He said he won't be. I'll handle it. She said, Jihoon, I've handled everything alone for 6 years. I'm not afraid of hard things. I'm afraid of things that start well and then disappear. He was quiet. Then he said, I know. I am the reason you're afraid of that. She looked at him. He didn't look away. And that mattered. At the next board meeting, one of his directors brought it up directly. Your personal situation is attracting attention. It could create complications. Ji-hun was calm. What kind of complications? The director gestured vaguely. A child from a relationship that wasn't public. Ji-hun set down his pen. I have a son, he said. The words were clear and unhurried. His name is Jaewoo. He is 6 years old. He likes robots and hates escalators, and he is the most important thing in my life. The room was very still. Ji-hun continued. Anyone who cannot work with that information is welcome to tell me now, so we can arrange a transition. No one said a word. At school, other children began noticing. Jaewoo's dad is the one who owns that company. Jaewoo sat with this attention, and found it more confusing than exciting. One boy asked why his father hadn't been around before. Jaewoo didn't answer at school. He asked at dinner. Were you too busy for me before? Ji-hun did not reach for a comfortable answer. He said, I didn't know about you. And that was my fault. Not because I chose something else, but because I had built a life where important things couldn't reach me. Jaewoo turned his spoon in his bowl. If you had known, I would have come immediately. Jaewoo studied him for a long time. Children test the truth in a face the way adults test glass, pressing until they find where it flexes. He found nothing flexible. He nodded slowly. Then he finished his dinner. The cold season arrived and with it, a fever that came on suddenly in the night. Soo-yeon called Ji-hun without thinking. He was there in 20 minutes. At the clinic he sat beside the bed, and did not look at his phone once. At 2 in the morning Jaewoo woke up confused and reached out and grabbed Ji-hun's hand and said, Dad? Ji-hun held on. I'm here. Jaewoo closed his eyes again. Soo-yeon sat across the room watching. The fear that had been living in her chest since Tokyo, the fear that he would simply not be there when she needed someone, quietly loosened for the first time. When Jaewoo recovered he brought home a drawing. 3 people in front of a house. Tall, medium, small. He had written a word at the top in large careful letters. Us. He gave it to Ji-hun. You can keep it, Jaewoo said, if you want. Ji-hun looked at it for a long moment. Then he said, I'm going to hang it somewhere I can see it every day. He meant his penthouse. But looking around it that evening, he realized the penthouse had never felt like somewhere a drawing like that belonged. He started looking at other options. Winter settled in and the apartment was warm with small, ordinary things. A pot of rice cooking. Jaewoo narrating his homework out loud to no one. Soo-yeon sorting through delivery schedules at the table. Ji-hun sitting on the floor with a model spaceship that had 14 pieces and instructions he was reading upside down. Dad, you're holding that backwards. Ji-hun turned it around. Better? Jaewoo sat down beside him and took the instructions. I'll read, you build. Ji-hun handed over the instructions. This is how it always works. Jaewoo looked very satisfied with this arrangement. At the company, things shifted in ways no one expected. Ji-hun stopped performing urgency. He stopped treating every problem like a fire. He gave his team more authority. He let people make decisions without him in the room. And something surprising happened. The company ran better. Not worse. Better. His managers found confidence they had been waiting for him to vacate. New thinking moved faster. Ji-hun held a meeting with his senior team and told them what he had learned. The most productive person in any room is not the one who sleeps the least. It is the one who knows where their energy actually belongs. He introduced parental leave improvements. He added a policy that meetings could not be scheduled before 8 in the morning or after 6 in the evening without explicit agreement. His team thought he had changed. He had. But he would argue he had finally started. Jaewoo came home from school one day walking differently. Prouder. Ji-hun asked what happened. Jaewoo said someone told him his dad was important. Ji-hun said, What did you say? Jaewoo considered. I said yes, but he also burned the seaweed soup twice last week. The other kids laughed. Ji-hun smiled to himself. Good answer. On a warm afternoon, Ji-hun asked Soo-yeon if she and Jaewoo would like to visit his office. Not to show off. Just because Jaewoo had asked about the tall buildings near the river many times and Ji-hun wanted him to see one from the inside. She agreed. The morning they went, Jaewoo wore the sweater with the rocket on it and brushed his hair himself with results that were ambitious if not accurate. In the lobby, Jihun watched his son look up at the height of the ceiling and go completely still with wonder. The elevator ascended 38 floors. Jaiwoo gripped Jihun's hand and tried to look like he wasn't. The doors opened onto a floor of glass and city sky. Jaiwoo walked to the window and put both palms against it. The whole city, he said. Yes, Jihun said. Jaiwoo turned around. It looks lonely up here. Jihun was quiet for a moment. It was. Jaiwoo looked back at the window. You should bring us more often so it isn't. Suyin stood near the wall and said nothing. She had imagined this office for 6 years as something cold and impenetrable. The place that had taken his attention and never given it back. But standing in it now, watching her son leave small handprints on the glass and watching Jihun crouch beside him and point out landmarks in the city below, it felt like a different place. It felt like somewhere that was finally learning its limits. Spring came gradually. The cold let go in small degrees. On an evening when Jaiwoo was doing homework and had gone quiet in the way that meant he was actually thinking hard, he stopped and said without looking up, "Appa?" Jihun looked over. "Yes. Are you going to stay forever?" The room felt like it held its breath. Jihun put down what he was holding. He thought about how to answer honestly and kindly at the same time. "I am not going anywhere," he said. "I won't pretend I'll be perfect. But I will be here." Jaiwoo kept his eyes on his homework. Even when things are hard. Especially then. Jaiwoo wrote something down. Then he said okay. That was all. It was everything. One evening after Jaiwoo had fallen asleep and the apartment was quiet, Jihun and Suyin sat together near the window. The city hummed somewhere below them. She said, "I was so angry for such a long time." He said, "I know." She said, "I built a whole life out of that anger. I made it into something useful." He was quiet. She looked at her hands. "I don't want to be angry anymore." He looked at her. "You don't have to be." She turned to face him. "Are you sure about all of this? Not just Jaiwoo. This. All of it." He did not answer quickly. He had learned not to. He said, "6 years ago I would have given you a rehearsed answer. Now I'll give you the real one." He reached across and held her hand, just held it, no movement, no pressure. "I am more sure of this than any decision I have made in my entire career. And I have made a lot of decisions." She looked at their hands. Then she said, "I want slow." He said, "Slow is fine." She said, "I want honest." He said, "Always." She said, "I want ordinary." His eyes softened. He said, "Ordinary is the only thing I've ever actually wanted, and it took me 40 years to know that." Months passed in a way that felt quiet and full at the same time. Jihun learned her habits slowly. The way she held her coffee cup with both hands even when it wasn't cold. The way she always knocked on Jaiwoo's door before opening it even though he never did. The way she laughed at things a second after everyone else, like she was just giving herself permission. He brought her lunch one afternoon during her delivery shift without calling ahead. She found him sitting on a bench outside the pharmacy with 2 containers of food, and an expression that was trying not to look too pleased with itself. "You didn't have to," she said. "I know," he said. "That's why it means something." She sat down beside him. They ate under a tree while the afternoon moved past them. For the first time in a long time she felt like a full person. Not just Jaiwoo's mother. Not just someone surviving. Someone who was seen. One quiet evening after dinner, while Jaiwoo slept and the city outside had dimmed to its softer nighttime frequency, Jihun reached into his jacket pocket. He set a small box on the table between them. No presentación. No grand speech. She looked at it, then at him. He said, "I am not asking because of guilt. I am not asking because of Jaiwoo, though he is the reason I finally understood what I want." He pushed the box gently across the table. "I am asking because when I imagine any version of the future that feels worth building, you're in it. Not as a chapter. As the whole story." She opened the box. A ring, simple, careful, chosen with attention instead of expense. Her hands weren't quite steady. He said, "I know I left a space in your life that you had to fill alone. I'm not asking you to forget that. I'm asking to be someone you can trust to stay." She was quiet for a long time. He waited. He had learned to wait. Then she said yes. Not loudly. Firmly. Like someone who had thought about it for a long time and finally arrived at the answer she had been circling. He put the ring on her finger. She looked at it. It fit. He put his arms around her and they stayed like that for a while without moving. And it was enough, it was more than enough. The next morning Jaiwoo noticed immediately. He pointed at her hand before he had finished his breakfast. Mom. What's that? She knelt down. That's a promise. He looked at Jihoon. Appa. Did you ask Mom? Jihoon nodded. What did you ask? He smiled. I asked if we could be a family. Jaiwoo straightened up and processed this with great seriousness. He pointed at himself. Did anyone ask me? Jihoon laughed. We should have. Jaiwoo. What do you think? Jaiwoo crossed his arms the way he always did when he was making a decision of consequence. He looked at his mother. He looked at Jihoon. He said I think yes. Then he went back to his breakfast. They found a house together. Not a penthouse. A house with a yard and enough walls for Jaiwoo's drawings and a kitchen where 3 people could move around without bumping into each other. But sometimes chose to anyway. Jihoon carried boxes. Jaiwoo supervised. He was very thorough. The bookshelf went there. The dinosaurs go in my room. Bongsik sleeps near the window. These were non-negotiable. Elena planted something in a pot near the front door. Jihoon fixed a broken hinge on the gate without being asked. It was a small thing. She noticed. Their wedding was small and unhurried. A garden. A few people who had known them well enough to earn a seat. Jaiwoo wore a suit that he had selected personally, and stood between them at the front, and held both their hands with the seriousness of someone performing an essential duty. When it was time for vows, Jihoon looked at Suyin and said, I once thought that success meant having no needs. That needing nothing was the same as being strong. He paused. You and Jaiwoo taught me that needing people is not weakness. It is the whole point. I promise to need you correctly. To show up. To stay when it is inconvenient. To be the kind of man our son already thinks I am. And to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve that. Suyin pressed her lips together briefly. Then she said, I once thought love was something you survived. Something you rebuilt yourself from after it went wrong. She looked at him steadily. You taught me that love can also be something you grow into slowly, if both people are paying attention. I promised to pay attention. Jaiwoo tugged her sleeve. Can I say something? They both looked down at him. He looked at the small gathered crowd. Then at his parents. He said I'm very happy. And that was more than enough. Life after that was not perfect. There were mornings where no one could find Jaiwoo's left shoe. There were evenings where Jihoon came home late from something that couldn't be helped, and arrived to a dinner that was warm in a covered pot, and a note that said we saved you some. There were nights Jaiwoo had bad dreams and needed both of them. There were arguments, small and large, resolved across a dinner table, or on the way to school, or in the quiet after midnight when the house was still, and it was easier to be honest. But there was no fear. Not anymore. Years passed. Jaiwoo grew. He stopped needing his hand held on escalators, though he would deny this had ever been an issue. He became interested in engineering and then music and then engineering again. He grew taller than Suyin, and was visibly working toward being taller than Jihoon. At a school career day, he was asked what he wanted to do when he grew up. He thought about it. I want to build something important, he said. But I also want to be home for dinner. His teacher wrote it down. One evening the 3 of them sat on the back step of their house watching the sun go down over the city. Jaiwoo leaned against Jihoon's side the way he had done since he was small, automatically, without thinking, the way you lean on something you trust completely. Jihoon looked at Suyin across the top of their son's head. She caught his eye and smiled. Not the careful smile from the restaurant. Not the guarded smile from the early months. The full one. The one she gave when she wasn't managing anything. He thought about the night he had walked into that small restaurant tired in a way sleep couldn't fix, and seen a woman counting coins in a worn delivery jacket with a boy coloring on a paper menu. He thought about how close he had come to never walking in. To choosing a different street, a different restaurant, a different night. Jaiwoo said without opening his eyes, Appa? Yes. What are you thinking about? Jihoon put his arm around his son's shoulder. About how lucky I am to have been paying attention that night. Jaiwoo was quiet for a moment. You were also lucky I noticed you first. Suyin laughed. Jihoon shook his head. He was right. He absolutely was. He had built a company that was written about in every major publication. He had closed deals that moved markets. He had stood in rooms full of powerful people and been the most powerful one. But sitting on this back step with the city turning gold around them, and his son's weight easy against his side and his wife's hand finding his in the evening light, he understood what he had been building toward all along without knowing it. Not a legacy. Not an empire. This. Just this. The simplest, most difficult, most important thing there is. If this story moved you, please like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories like this one.